Hey everyone, Noir here. Let's get into today's Reddit story.
When I was 21, my parents threw my brother a huge party because he bought his third car before turning 25. It was not for graduating college or getting a good job. It was just because he bought another car, a flashy two-door coupe with underglow lights and leather seats that probably cost more than everything I had managed to save. He kept revving the engine in the driveway like he was starring in an action movie. I stood there with a cup of flat soda while everyone crowded around the car like it was something incredible. My mom even wiped a smudge off the hood and smiled. "Isn't he amazing?" she said proudly. 3 cars before 25. I was 21 too. I did not own a car or a house. All I had was a small savings account and a jar labeled, "Break only if the apocalypse arrives." When I mentioned that I had finally saved enough to open a high-interest savings account, something I was actually proud of, my dad laughed. "No offense, Ryan," he said, pointing his drink at me, "but nobody is impressed by someone who saves pennies. You cannot drive a savings account." Brandon grinned. "Come on, man. Loosen up. Money is meant to be spent, not sit around like it is on life support." Everyone laughed except me. I was not saving to impress anybody. I was saving because I never wanted to end up asking someone else to help pay for a meal every month. That night, I went back to my tiny studio apartment above a nail salon. The furniture did not match, the lamp kept flickering, and the place smelled like nail polish remover mixed with cheap ramen. It was far from perfect, but everything in it was mine. I paid my rent every month, had no credit card debt, and did not owe anyone a dime. As I lay on my futon staring at the ceiling, I made myself a promise. I would rather struggle on my own than look successful because someone else paid for it. What nobody at that party talked about was that every one of Brandon's cars was financed. My parents had even co-signed 2 of the loans. When I once asked if they could help with my college tuition, my mom said, "You have always been independent. We are proud of that." Apparently, they were proud enough to let me figure everything out on my own. Brandon still lived at home without paying rent, posting pictures of his cars online with captions about hustling. Meanwhile, I worked 40 hours a week in warehouse logistics and spent nights and weekends helping a retired mechanic who usually paid me with greasy envelopes full of $20 bills and the occasional meatball sub. It was not glamorous, but it was steady work. Every dollar had a purpose. I bought tools, built an emergency fund, and eventually paid cash for an old Craigslist car that stalled at every third red light. At least it was mine, with no monthly payments and no help from my parents. By 24, I had saved enough to cover 2 years of living expenses. I was debt-free and earning extra money fixing broken BMWs out of a friend's driveway. Brandon was still living at home, still showing off his cars on social media, while my parents acted like he was destined for greatness. To them, I was just practical. My mom actually said that one Thanksgiving like it was an insult. Right after handing Brandon a check for his future investments, she looked at me and said, "Can you bring the rolls next year?" It hurt more than I wanted to admit. Every holiday was the same. Brandon was always the center of attention, and I was the dependable one nobody noticed. I never wanted praise. I just wanted a little respect. While everyone admired the flashy lifestyle, I quietly kept building my own future. By the time I was 26, I had saved enough to rent a small 2-bay garage on the edge of town. A friend painted the sign for me because I had helped him move a few times. It simply read, "Ryan's Reliable Repair." The shop was nothing special. No fancy waiting room or expensive coffee machine. Just me, a used lift, a few old toolboxes, and plenty of cars that needed fixing. Around the same time, Brandon wrecked his 4th car. He claimed a squirrel ran into the road. Judging by the tree he hit, I was not so sure. I did not hear about it from Brandon. I found out through my mom's Facebook posts asking everyone to pray for him because, thankfully, he was alive. My mom's post ended by saying, "Cars can be replaced, sons cannot." The comments were full of people calling Brandon brave and asking what happened. Nobody mentioned he had been speeding through a neighborhood, skipped wearing a seatbelt, or posted a selfie holding a Four Loko less than an hour before the crash. Not long after that, my parents helped him get financing for car number 5. Meanwhile, I spent my evenings trying to keep an old 1992 Honda Civic alive. Little by little, people around town started to know me as the mechanic who charged fair prices, stayed late when needed, and would even drive out in the rain if someone's battery died in a grocery store parking lot. I did not have family money or special treatment. Just a toolbox, sore hands, and a willingness to work. To my parents, though, I was still just Ryan. Dependable. Predictable. Not much of a dreamer. They said those words like they were insults. Somehow paying your bills and staying out of trouble counted against me. Brandon was different in their eyes. He has vision, my dad loved to say while patting him on the back. One day my mom called me, excited to tell me Brandon was starting his own brand. "Oh yeah?" I asked while replacing a broken engine mount. "What kind of brand?" "He hasn't decided everything yet," she replied. "But it's going to be bold, disruptive." His big business turned out to be a Shopify store selling $40 hoodies with slogans like grind mode only and no plan B. At Christmas, he gave everyone one of those hoodies. Mine said, "Money talks, losers save." I looked at it, folded it, and handed it back. "Wrong size," I said. "I wear self-respect." Nobody laughed. Dinner stayed awkward after that. By then, I was used to feeling invisible whenever I visited. It did not matter that my business was growing. Customers trusted me, and my bills were always paid. None of it impressed my parents. "You still working with your hands?" Dad asked me once. "No," I answered. "Now I just yell at engines until they fix themselves." He forced a polite laugh, but I could tell he still looked down on what I did. The hardest part was realizing they never really saw me. To them, I was simply the son who was not Brandon. Meanwhile, Brandon still lived at home, talking about new business ideas and taking more promotional pictures than actual orders. When I was 27, I bought my first tow truck with cash. Seeing my business name painted on the side made me prouder than any expensive sports car ever could. That same year, I overheard my mom telling relatives I still did odd jobs, as if I was barely getting by instead of running a successful repair shop. I could have corrected her, but I stayed quiet. I helped carry the cooler outside and let everyone keep believing Brandon was the family's success story. Funny thing was, nobody ever asked who repaired all their vehicles, replaced Dad's fuel pump, or rotated Mom's tires every season. They simply expected me to keep showing up. What they did not understand was that being quiet did not make me weak, and being dependable did not mean people could walk all over me. By the time I turned 30, Ryan's Reliable Repair had become one of the most trusted shops in town. I had 4 employees, steady business, and even picked up a nice espresso machine from a closing cafe for $50. The waiting room had air conditioning, magazines, and a sign that read, "No, we cannot fix what your cousin watched on YouTube." Life was good, until I visited my parents. Every trip back felt exactly the same. Brandon sat on the couch talking about startups, subscriptions, and business strategies while my parents listened like he was a genius. "We're pivoting to digital subscription models," he announced one afternoon. "Pivoting from what?" I asked. He paused for a second before answering. "That part doesn't matter." I just nodded, walked outside, and added air to Mom's tire because it was running low. Nobody even noticed. Even after Brandon's online store had been sitting under maintenance for 6 months, my parents still treated him like a future millionaire. Meanwhile, I had just signed a contract to service an entire fleet of delivery vans across the county. I was making good money, had savings, insurance, and investments. Brandon had motivational quotes taped to his mirror and expenses my parents kept paying for. But facts never mattered when you were the golden child. At one family barbecue, my dad actually said, "Some people are born for greatness, others just keep the engines running." I was standing right there flipping burgers. I did not argue or say a word. Later that night, though, I quietly took the jumper pack out of Dad's trunk, the same one they borrowed every other month after he left the lights on. I figured Brandon could use his networking skills to solve that problem. Petty? Maybe, but it felt satisfying. By then, I had stopped expecting them to notice anything I accomplished. They never asked about my shop, never visited it once, and had no idea I had bought the building outright. They also did not know I owned several tow trucks that half the town called whenever they broke down. To them, I was still just the guy who liked working on cars. Meanwhile, Brandon was busy redesigning another business card. Then, everything changed. One morning, my bank called to verify a co-signed lease application for a new vehicle under my name. "My name?" I asked. "Is this Ryan Walker?" the woman confirmed. "Yes, but I never applied for a vehicle." After a brief pause, she explained that my name and credit had been used to co-sign a $68,000 luxury sport utility vehicle. The other name on the application was Brandon Walker. Brandon. I felt my stomach drop. I had never signed anything. I had never given permission. I had barely spoken to him in weeks. "Cancel it immediately," I said, "and report it as fraud." The bank stopped the application. I locked my credit, froze my accounts, filed a fraud report, and waited. I knew Brandon well enough to know he only took big risks when he expected someone else to deal with the consequences. The first text came just after 9 that morning. "Mom, hey, sweetie. Weird question. Did you freeze your credit? Brandon said there's a problem at the dealership." I ignored it. 10 minutes later, Dad texted, "Call us, it's urgent." Then Brandon started calling. I let every call go unanswered. Instead, a group message popped up. "Dad, we need to talk. This is getting blown out of proportion." Brandon, "Bro, just call the Nissan dealership and sign the papers. It's only a formality." "Mom, please don't make this into a big scene. It's just a car." "Just a car." I laughed so hard my mechanic, Jake, looked into the office. "You all right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just watching my family fall apart over a loan I never agreed to." He took one look at my face and quietly walked back into the shop. By lunchtime, I had 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 15 text messages. Finally, I answered my mom's call. "Ryan," she said in her sweetest voice, "you're making this much bigger than it needs to be." "Am I?" I replied, "because it sounds more like identity theft." "He didn't mean to use your name." "That isn't how using someone's name works, Mom." She sighed. "Your brother just needed the sport utility vehicle for his business. He thought it would help him meet clients." "In the trunk?" I asked. "Was he planning to surprise them?" "Please stop joking." "I'm not joking. If you want comedy, ask Brandon how fraud fits into his business plan." The line went quiet. Not because she felt guilty, because she was annoyed. Finally, she said, "We raised you better than this. You're being cruel." "No," I answered calmly. "I'm being careful." Then she hung up. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the old ceiling fan rattle above me. For the first time in years, I did not feel angry. I felt relieved. The pretending was finally over. For years I had been the dependable son, the one everyone expected to fix Brandon's problems without complaining. Not anymore. They had tried to saddle me with a $68,000 mistake, and I was done cleaning up after him. That weekend, Dad sent one last message. "Don't come to family dinner unless you're ready to apologize." I read it twice, laughed, and made plans with my own crew instead. We pulled a cooler outside, fired up a charcoal grill, and played old rock songs through a Bluetooth speaker that cut out every few minutes. We sat on old tires and toolboxes, eating wings and burgers while laughing about customers who called brake rotors rotaries or swore air filters were a scam. For once, I was not the dependable son everyone took for granted. I was just Ryan, the guy who built something with his own hands, surrounded by people who actually appreciated him. I did not know it then, but the family dinner they told me not to attend would be the last invitation I ever cared about. After I reported the fraud, there was no huge confrontation. Nobody came pounding on my shop door. Instead, my family simply went silent. The group chat that used to be filled with Brandon's motivational posts and Mom's random lunch pictures went dead. Dad stopped sending his passive-aggressive memes. Even the yearly message asking me to clean their gutters before winter never came. I did not miss any of it. For the first time in years, my phone was not buzzing with favors, guilt trips, or reminders that I was expected to fix everyone's problems. It felt strange at first. Then it felt freeing. Meanwhile, the shop kept growing. We landed a contract servicing 30 vans for a local courier company. They chose us because my mechanic, Jake, had repaired one of their vehicles on a Sunday when every other shop was closed. After that, word spread fast. Soon, Ryan's Reliable Repair became one of the busiest shops in town. We were booked 2 weeks ahead, so I hired another mechanic, then another, and finally someone to run the front desk. He even convinced a 72-year-old customer to leave an online review that said, "He fixed my muffler and restored my faith in men." I printed that review and hung it on the wall. Not long after, I bought the garage next door with the rusty fence and the broken neon clock that always flashed 8888. It doubled our workspace. My crew celebrated with tacos. I celebrated by paying the invoice in full. Still, my family said nothing. No congratulations, no visits, Not even a quick phone call. Part of me still hoped someone would finally say they were proud of me, but that never happened. Then winter arrived. Around here, winter hits hard. One week it is sunny. The next, it is 8 degrees Fahrenheit and cold enough to freeze your breath before you reach your truck. Business exploded. Everyone who ignored their vehicles all year suddenly needed emergency repairs. One evening, just before closing, my phone rang. It was Mom. I let it ring for a few seconds before answering. "Hey," she skipped the greeting. "Ryan, can you come over? The garage door won't open, the power's out, Brandon's car won't start, and your dad tried using jumper cables. Something sparked, and now it smells like burning rubber." I stayed quiet while she kept talking. "Roadside assistance says it'll be at least 2 hours. It's freezing, and your father refuses to call a tow truck. He said, maybe you could help, just in case." Like I had not always been their backup plan. After everything, I was still the emergency option. Finally, I asked, "Why can't Brandon handle it?" There was a pause. "He's trying. He's looking for the owner's manual." I almost laughed. "I can't come," I said. "Oh, maybe tomorrow?" "No, I can't do this anymore. Not tonight, not next time. I'm done being the spare tire everyone only remembers when something breaks." She was quiet. "Your father isn't going to like that." I smiled. He never has. Then I hung up. For weeks after that, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, nothing. Honestly, the silence was a relief. While they disappeared, my business kept moving forward. I signed a maintenance contract with a rideshare company that brought in 10 more vehicles every week. I hired a part-time accountant and finally upgraded the heating system in the shop. My crew was doing well too. Jake bought himself a new truck. Luke finally took a vacation after years of putting it off. We spent our days talking about repairs, stubborn bolts, torque specs, and what pizza to order every Friday. Life was simple. Then one afternoon, my dad walked into the shop. Dad looked different the moment he walked in. His cheeks were a little more hollow. More gray showed in his hair, and he had that stiff posture people get when they are trying not to admit they feel uncomfortable. "Ryan," he said. "Dad." We stood there in the middle of the shop, surrounded by oil stains, metal parts, and the smell of brake fluid. "Nice place," he said, looking around. It was probably the first time he had ever really seen it. "Thanks," I answered. He shoved his hands into his pockets and stood there for a second like he expected me to help him. Then he skipped right past asking how I was or how business had been. "Your mom's been worried." I raised an eyebrow. "Worried about what?" "The house," he said. "The roof's leaking, the furnace quit, the pipes froze last week, and the car needs work. Brandon, well, he isn't around much." "Shocking," I said. Dad frowned. "Look, things have been tight." There was that word again. Tight. It meant Mom could not keep paying Brandon's bills anymore. It meant all the money they dumped into his business ideas had disappeared. It meant the golden child had finally run out of luck. "We need help," Dad said. There it was. No excuses, no sugarcoating. Just 4 simple words from the same man who used to treat me like background noise. "I'm not a charity," I replied. "I didn't say you were." "You didn't have to." He opened his mouth like he wanted to give me another speech about family, responsibility, or blood being thicker than water. But nothing came out. Instead, I said, "You remember when you told me some people keep the engines running while other people are born for greatness?" He lowered his eyes. "Turns out you were right. You just had the names backwards." His jaw tightened. "I just want to talk," he said quietly. I shrugged. "Book an appointment. I'm busy this week." Then I turned around and walked back into the shop, leaving him standing there between an old Civic and a leaking minivan. Exactly where he always thought I belonged. It took 4 days. 4 days after Dad left, Brandon walked into my garage. Not a text, not a phone call. He actually showed up like we were old friends. He was wearing sunglasses indoors in the middle of winter and looked like an influencer whose sponsorship deals had dried up. "Ryan," he said, spreading his arms. "Bro, it's been a minute." I did not move. Across the shop, Jake spotted him and quietly picked up a wrench. He did not raise it. He just held it like a warning. I gave Jake a quick nod. Everything was fine. Annoying, but fine. Brandon leaned on the front counter. His cheap jacket had a rip near the pocket. His beard looked untrimmed, and he still had that same fake entrepreneur energy. "You've been doing good," he said, looking around. "This place looks awesome." I stayed silent. After a few seconds, his smile faded. "Okay, I need a favor." There it was. "How much?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "Let's save some time." "How much?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Like 500. I just looked at him. 1,000. "Of course." "No." He frowned. "You didn't even think about it." "I did," I said. "Just really fast." His smile disappeared. "It isn't even for me." "Oh, it's for Mom and Dad. Things are really bad." I said nothing. "The mortgage is behind. The furnace died. The car broke down. They've been trying to hold everything together, but they need money," I finished. He nodded. After a long silence, I asked, "Where was all this concern when you put my name on that car loan?" "That was a mistake, bro." "No," I said. "Forgetting to call someone is a mistake. Using somebody else's identity is fraud." "I didn't think it would turn into all this." "Exactly. You never think about what happens afterward because you've never had to." He looked everywhere except at me. "They're going to lose the house," he said quietly. I looked him straight in the eye. "Then maybe they'll finally understand what living under pressure feels like. I've lived with that pressure since I was a teenager, eating dollar ramen while you were wrecking luxury cars." He flinched. "You think I'm being harsh?" I asked. "For years I fixed everything around that house. I repaired the cars, changed light bulbs, even paid for Mom's medicine without telling anyone. You got the praise. I got the work." "I never asked for the praise," Brandon muttered. He swallowed hard. "So, that's it?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm done paying for mistakes, yours or anybody else's." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Finally, he said, "You always wanted to be better than me." I shook my head. "No, I never wanted to be better than you. I just wanted to be free from you. That's the difference. I never needed to beat Brandon. I just needed to stop living in his shadow." He stood there for another second, then quietly turned around and walked out of the shop. No yelling, no slammed doors, just silence. For the first time, he looked ashamed. I watched him leave before turning back to Jake, who was now holding 2 wrenches instead of 1. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, letting out a long breath. "I am now." The next week passed, then another. No calls, no surprise visits, no messages. Just peace. One morning, while I was working on a suspension repair, a delivery driver walked into the shop carrying a certified envelope. "You, Ryan?" "Yeah. Need your signature." I signed, opened the envelope, and saw the return address from a law office. The letter was short and straight to the point. My parents were officially putting their house up for sale. They had fallen behind on the mortgage, and the debt had finally caught up with them. At the bottom of the page, Mom had written one sentence by hand. "If you change your mind, we'd still accept your help. Love, Mom." I stood there staring at it. I was not angry. I was not happy. I just felt nothing. I never wanted to watch them lose everything. I just wasn't willing to keep saving people who had spent years dragging me down. A few days later, I happened to drive past their house. There was a for sale sign in the yard. The place looked older than I remembered. The driveway was cracked, the mailbox leaned to one side, and the lawn had clearly been neglected. Dad was sitting alone on the front porch. He looked exhausted. He didn't wave. Maybe he never even noticed me. I kept driving. That was the moment I realized something. I hadn't beaten them. I had simply survived. Then I built a life of my own while they slowly tore theirs apart. That evening my phone rang from an unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it, but something made me answer. A nervous woman's voice said, "Hi, is this Ryan? I'm sorry to bother you. A friend gave me your number. I heard you fix cars. Mine broke down on the highway, and I really need a ride across town." Nobody else answered. I recognized the voice immediately. It was my mother. I stayed calm. I did not argue. I did not call her out. I simply said, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number." Then I ended the call. It was the ride she had been waiting 15 years for. She just never realized she had missed it.